This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. Hi. What do you guys want to talk about? This is such good shit. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
It has come to my attention that I may be using some of the same words on my recaps. Apparently people have a problem with the overuse of the term promo, even though that basically describes 90% of these studio shows we've been doing for the NWA Crockett reviews. But perhaps we can substitute some words. Get that handy-dandy dictionary out and start running down the roster of synonyms for the term promo. Didn't ever think it would come to that point, where wrestling would ever predict the word promo would be an overexposed term. But apparently it rubs people the wrong way. I'm partially kidding. People are funny when they leave comments. They just leave these really obscure one-word phrases, and then I think I'm kind of left to interpret the message. I believe SM is equivalent to so much. I think I read that somewhere. Well, get ready, because you're going to hear me use that term plenty on this week's show. We are back for another Monday installment of the FSWR podcast, a week removed from the Elimination Chamber. Apparently people hated that show a lot more than I did, which is odd because I'm normally the grumpy one here that complains about every modern wrestling pay-per-view. Turns out there are grumpier people out there than me. Hard to believe, I know. But, I think I'm mostly just prepping myself for this Retro Raw report. But as always, for the people watching for the first time, make sure to subscribe, comment, like for me. Check us out on Rumble and YouTube every Monday and Friday. We are slowly gearing up for WrestleMania season, both with the classic and modern wrestling. Traditionally, it's supposed to be an exciting time of year as a fan, because it's typically the time of year where big things happen. If big things are happening at this year's Mania, kind of waiting for them to give me a teaser. And since we already know WrestleMania 11 was an absolute drizzling garbage fest, well, I guess we don't have much to look forward to there. Except a really bad pay-per-view. So on the topic of really bad things, why don't we get into this really bad Retro Raw from March 6, 1995. Get this gravy train rolling. Now, I don't want to jump the gun here and immediately start breaking down segments, but I had to get this out of the way. It's one of the first things at the top of my notes. The cold open for Raw this week, they had a couple pieces of footage from the WrestleMania press conference at the Harley-Davidson Cafe, the location where they mainly promoted Bam Bam versus Lawrence Taylor. And of course, alongside Bam Bam and Taylor, we've also got Vince McMahon, we got Shawn Michaels present, Sid Vicious is kind of standing behind him, working the bodyguard role. And then on the polar opposite end of the conference table, we have, as I noted, big sexy Diesel Nash. Rocking the suit look, the slick back hair. He was literally just Kevin Nash. And it was kind of at that point where I started realizing Diesel really never was much of a gimmick, was he? It was kind of just Kevin Nash being himself while using a WWE name. Like, even watching his demeanor in this short clip, he still had that "I really don't want to be here right now" expression. So it was actually the real-life Kevin Nash. Bored out of his mind, totally didn't want to be there, didn't give a fuck. You know, it's hard to imagine when that guy was on top, WWF was doing record low business. Who'd have ever thought that would happen? Now, the press conference was the main thing of note this week. The other was the Shawn Michaels versus Davey Boy match that opened the program. Obviously dating back to what happened at the Royal Rumble when Bulldog thought he had eliminated Shawn. But right at the last second, Shawn snuck back in and dumped Davey Boy over the top rope to the floor, stealing the match from under his nose. So there was definitely a little bit of backstory for this one. Only took them about a month to even address it on TV, but better late than never, I guess. And early on, it's pretty basic stuff, with Bulldog throwing around Shawn and Shawn overselling everything to the point of absurdity. Had some nice shots of Sid's back knee while the camera guy was walking around on the floor. That was pleasant. JC demanding health insurance while sitting 2 inches to the left of Vince McMahon. That was rather amusing. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Cody had a lot of good one-liners during this match. I heard him at one point call the referee Hatchet Head. That was a nice little homage to his commentary on Chucklefuck Taylor of AEW infamy. But the wrestling I thought was fine, all things considered. On this fucking show, it might have been the best match we've seen in all of 95 so far. And at best, I would say it was reasonably good. There was a cool sequence where Davey Boy tried to dump Shawn over the top of the floor, but Sid caught Shawn in his arms. Then he just sat him down on the apron so Shawn could punch Bulldog in the jaw and then give him a frog splash over the top rope. You know, Vince likes to use that term seesaw. It's a seesaw match, pal. God, he loved that fucking phrase for whatever reason. That's pretty much what it was. You know, both guys were favoring injuries at various points. Davey Boy the knee, Shawn the back. I wonder if the back selling was Shawn testing out ideas for a few years down the road. And they had Shawn slow things down for the heel a little bit. Kind of made room for Sid to get involved at various points. You know, and that left the opportunity to pick things up as they came back for the final sequence after the commercial. Bulldog made the comeback on Shawn. Just threw him around like a ping pong ball. And, well, eventually it leads to the spot where Shawn sidesteps Davey Boy as he goes flying out of the ring. You know, Shawn has the ref isolated. Sid comes over and runs Davey Boy into the ring post. So that opened the door for Shawn to take advantage and eventually catch him with the super kick for the 3 count. Pretty abrupt finish, too. Didn't really build up to it in any dramatic, meaningful way. But, I mean, they basically devoted half the show to this match. You know, like I said, in comparison to most Raw TV matches we see, this was off the charts good. You know, that's not to downplay the work of either guy, because, yeah, they worked hard. It was a very good professional wrestling match. You know, when Shawn was motivated, he knew what to do in the ring. And Bulldog, even at this stage in his career, was still mobile and very agile. So I enjoyed it. Fun match, easy to watch. You know, gave it plenty of time, but it was never boring. Like, even during the heat portion, they still had Sid doing stuff behind the ref's back to keep the people engaged. Cornette overselling his fear of Sid being 5 feet in front of him. That was pretty great. Especially when Sid wasn't even looking in his general direction. And obviously Shawn had to go over, so anyone thinking this would be Davey Boy's chance to get payback on what happened at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, you were sadly mistaken here. It was a no-brainer in terms of booking. And staying on the topic of Shawn briefly, kind of goes hand in hand with the press conference coverage. Once I get past the annoying walking jar of vanilla pudding that's Todd Pettingill, they aired some footage of the Shawn Diesel hype. That was after Diesel got off to the podium, told everybody he's the happiest he's ever been, while sounding about as bored as one could possibly imagine. And then Shawn got up and basically did a babyface promo, promising to give everybody the WrestleMania performance of a lifetime. He's supposed to be the heel in this feud. Just a friendly reminder there. And as for the Bam Bam LT hype, it was more or less the same. Nothing physical broke out there except for a very awkward exchange where I think LT was going in to bite Bam Bam on the cheek. Maybe he slapped a little loogie on there for good measure. I don't really know. But I can tell you one thing. So far, the WrestleMania 11 build has been ass. Absolutely appalling. They've now put more focus on the celebrity match than their world title match. This is not even close. Like, at this stage, you could already see which one was main eventing the show. And if you couldn't, you had blinders on. So that left about 20 minutes of airtime for pretty much void filler. They've already got the two big story pieces out of the way. So we go to the ring for Bob Backlund versus Buck Quartermain. It was here where I realized, oh yeah, that's right. They still have the Bob Backlund Bret Hart I Quit match to promote. And in fact, Vince went ahead and made the announcement right here on the spot. It has now been made official. Vince had received, apparently via word of mouth from an unknown source, that Backlund made the challenge to Bret for an I Quit match at WrestleMania. And that was it. I'm not shitting you. That is how they officially cemented this match. Vince said, I'm hearing through my earpiece right now that this match is going to be a thing. And who made this judgment call? Beats me. Apparently Dave Meltzer was in Gorilla talking to Vince through the headset, feeding him information that only the Wrestling Observer would know of. It's a hell of a way to promote a stipulation match. Let's just randomly announce it in passing during a Backlund squash match on TV. Likewise, they did the same thing for announcing The Undertaker versus King Kong Bundy, neither of whom even appeared on this show. Just a spur-of-the-moment thing that Vince said while the match was in progress. I wrote down absolutely nothing about the match except for the following sentence. Backlund did some amateur takedowns while the match went an eternity, and eventually Backlund won with a chicken wing. That was basically one giant run-on sentence that could further be simplified as Backlund did some boring stuff for a while and then won with his finish. And speaking of matches I barely bothered to write anything down for, the epitome of standby material, Steve Dunn versus Duke the Dumpster. My notes consist of the following questions. Why was this match booked? Why is Harvey Whippleman now managing half of Well Done? Why are they using this as background noise to advertise Bret Hart versus Jerry Lawler for next week's Raw? And why is Lawler still on a mission statement to prove that Brett is a racist? I do not have answers for any of these questions. And you'll be shocked to hear the crowd did not give a shit about this match. Make a mental note about that. The dumpster won with a trash compactor after Dunn got the heat on him for an hour. Horrible. Beyond appalling. As was this WrestleMania 11 hype package where they had Paul Bear and Mr. Fuji dress in drag. If I took the time to actually explain what the hell was going on here, you'd probably think I was ribbing. That or that I was on drugs. Allow for me to inform you. It was too unbearably horrible to even take notes on. My brain melted into a puddle by the time it ended. Hideous television. Like, even Percy Pringle couldn't make this work. Thank God this show had Shawn versus Davey Boy, because that was about the only thing that saved it. I mean, you could basically turn off this show after the 20-minute mark, because nothing else was even remotely worth discussing in great detail. And I keep saying it, but so far the WrestleMania hype is all about LT versus Bam Bam. Everything else, including their fucking world title match, it's all background filler. You know, people often claim that WrestleMania 11 was worse than 9. The more I see the build to this show, the more I think I understand why people may come to that conclusion. So it has been approximately 1 week since the Elimination Chamber. Already I've completely forgotten everything that happened. I remember all the stuff that happened with Cody, The Rock, and the Bloodline. Everything else, complete blur. Which is kind of the story of SmackDown most weeks. I always know what's going on with the Bloodline. Everything else, not so much. Like, even the brief VTR they played at the beginning, the little highlight package from the show, I was like, huh. Apparently all that stuff happened. And that's when I remembered, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't even watch the Girls' Chamber match. That was like half the show right there. But we are back here in the States for Friday Night SmackDown. The road to WrestleMania continues. And it really is pretty much the Cody versus Bloodline show. Nothing else is remotely close to being a priority of focus. And as always the case with WWE, it takes them like 10 fucking minutes to ever get to the point of substance with anything. You know, once you get past all the pyro and the ring entrances. And in the case of everything that went down here, it wasn't until like 20 minutes in when they finally got to a point. This was so bizarre. We start with Roman and crew. They're in Glendale, Arizona, so immediately Roman's undercutting the people and talking about how they're probably in the wrong city because he used to get a better reception. So then he calls out the Phoenix crowd to acknowledge him. And he basically tells the Glendale fans that they have one last shot to impress him. Otherwise, Roman's leaving since he already fulfilled his contractual obligations of actually showing up to the building. So they boo him some more. Roman eventually gets fed up and tries to tell Paul to fire up the jet. At which point, Paul tells Roman that The Rock is on his way out. After this commercial break, and you'll never guess, they actually cut to a commercial they had Paul Heyman begin a promo by setting up a commercial plug, and then they actually went to it. I'm like, what is happening here? Why are we 15 minutes in and literally nothing has happened? Again, people, you wonder why I skip over most of this shite. The only thing they did here that was really of value, and it was subtle, whenever Heyman was setting up The Rock's entrance, giving him the whole red carpet treatment by putting him over as one of the biggest box office draws in the movie industry, you know, basically trying to powder him up as the greatest of all time. They did this really clever camera cut to Roman, who was sort of leaning into the ropes, looking unimpressed, dejected, a little pissed off. That was at least a good attention to detail. But like I said, by the time The Rock actually came out and did anything, we're like 20 minutes in and nothing's been said or done of any story advancement. I mean, we've quite literally wasted the first quarter of the show with literal jack shit to talk about. We did learn, though, from Rocky. Valuable information here. Apparently, Phoenix is the #1 city in America for cocaine and drug abuse. So that was, in fact, a lie. 20 minutes in, we did get something of value. It just had nothing to do with pro wrestling and had everything to do with The Rock trying to be a comedian. Now, I'll be the first to say, right out of the gate, yes, this promo went a while, and I would say roughly 80% of it was WrestleMania related. The other 20, I think Rock was mainly just trying to pop Solo Sikoa. And he almost had him a time or two. He almost got him to break character. But it didn't go according to plan. A lot of talking in circles at various points. But again, it's The Rock, so, you know, he has the people in the palm of his hand the whole time, because that's just kind of what The Rock does. And he basically denies Cody's offer for a one-on-one match at WrestleMania, because that's not how The Rock does business, brother. However, the Bloodline have a counter offer for Cody, because Rock's on the board now. He's probably dealing with lawyers on a daily basis, so he's getting up to snuff with all that legal jargon. And he tells Cody pretty much what all of us presumed would be the match for night one. They just added a little bit of a twist on the stipulation. If Cody and the clown-faced emoji Seth Rollins manage to beat The Rock and Roman, then the Bloodline will be barred from ringside for night 2, when Roman defends the title against Cody. However, if the Bloodline win on night 1, then Roman versus Cody is anything goes, anything's legal, Bloodline rules. Rock can do commentary. Jimmy can be the special guest referee. Solo can sing the national anthem. Still didn't get him to crack. And, I mean, there was a bunch of other shit he said in between. I tried to take mental notes of it. He made a reference to his cock size at one point. There were multiple sex innuendos here that were probably not suited for cable television, but again, it's The Rock, so of course he's going to get away with it. And the big thing that it builds to is right when The Rock is about to wrap up, he goes in for his signature "if you smell" shtick, but Roman cups the mic with his hand, and he tells Rock that he'll do anything for his family, but he needs one thing from The Rock. He needs him to acknowledge him as the tribal chief. And they milked that tension for all it was worth. But eventually, Rock does acknowledge Roman as his tribal chief. And then he tells the Glendale fans to go smoke some crack. Now, looking back, that probably took me all of 5 minutes to cover here. It is no exaggeration. It took them approximately 35 minutes plus commercial to get through everything here. So if you're not a fan of Rock promos, this is probably like Chinese water torture. I'm intrigued to know what Brian Last thought of it. I would say I didn't hate it. Probably could have done without all the dick jokes and the poor attempts at comedy. You know, I think the big conversation to come out of this is contemplating how they plan on booking the tag match on night one, provided Cody accepts the challenge, which we know he will. But how do you book the finish for that? Is it as simple as having Rock turn on Roman in the tag match and then leave him out to dry? Or do they have Rock and Roman beat Rollins on night one to set up the stipulation match for night two? Then you do something there where Cody still defies the odds and wins the belt. I mean, it is an interesting dilemma to look at on paper. I'm kind of torn. I'm not really a huge fan of the anything goes, no rules, free-for-all stipulation. I mean, God, we've seen that formula with Roman's matches for the last 4 years now. Now, what I thought they should have done was maybe book a stipulation where if Rock and Roman win on night one, then you have Rock maybe be the special guest referee or the special guest enforcer for the title match on night two. You know, that would at least leave some room for nuance. Because you could still have Cody and Roman do a regular match, but just have Rock in the background buying his time and waiting for the opportunity to either turn on Roman or do whatever it is they have planned for him. I just wasn't sold on the Bloodline rules thing. I mean, there's too much gray area with all that without me thinking it'll devolve into every Roman Reigns title match we've seen in the last several years. But we'll see. Overall, it was a very long segment. It wasn't a home run from start to finish. But it accomplished something in the end. Just took a fucking half hour to get to the point. Which you can basically call the WWE archetype. They eventually get to a point. Just takes 40 minutes longer than absolutely necessary. So after that, we had a very unorthodox segment involving Randy Orton, Austin Theory, and Grayson Fodder in the locker room. Randy Orton showing some honest-to-God personality. Holy shit. I haven't seen this much fire out of Orton in well over 10 years. He was pretty great. Fodder and Theory were watching the clip of the men's chamber match where Logan Paul knocked out Orton with a brass knucks. So naturally, Orton walks in and sees the video feed. And then he asks which guy would like to get his head ripped off later on. So Fodder serves up Theory to him and throws him under the bus. And then Orton smacks Theory on the back of the shoulder and goes, "See you out there, kid." It was good. I like when Randy actually looks enthused and motivated. It's a rarity these days. So then the show basically turned into a glorified Glow program for the next half hour. We had multiple back-to-back women's segments. A lot of boobies on the TV. There was a Tiffany Stratton versus Naomi match where Tiffany went over with the prettiest moonsault ever. I'm not joking, that is her actual finish. It's probably a good thing I didn't watch that. Elsewise, that would probably be the least of my concerns with having to talk about a Tiffany Stratton match. We also had Bayley and Dakota Kai versus the Kabuki Warriors, which basically went exactly as I anticipated it would from the moment they announced it. To the shock of absolutely nobody, except for the apparent dumbass Bayley, Dakota Kai turned on Bayley and helped Damage Control kick her ass. Gee. Who'd have ever seen that coming? I mean, at least that only went like 4 minutes, so I didn't have to suffer through 2 full-length girls' matches back-to-back. But, yeah, Dakota's a heel again. Still just kind of working that bit player position in Damage Control like she has been for the last 3 years. And they had a chance to rectify that by maybe turning her babyface and aligning her with Bayley. God forbid they do something different with her. But no. Now she's just right back to being the same old lame heel she's been for the better part of the last 3 years. There was also a brief confrontation with all of Damage Control in the back with Jade Cargill. My first thought was, how in the world did Jade just stand there and not smash over these fucking pipsqueaks? It was laughably stupid. Looked like a grown woman standing off with 4 high school children. Are you kidding me? Jade should have just tackled them all and eaten their lunch. Another missed opportunity there. But a lot of that was mostly a giant fast forward for me. A couple periodic stops along the way, but I mean, at least they confined most of the girl stuff to one specific portion of the show instead of trying to spread it all over the place. That way we could get back to the important material. Like Braun Breaker smashing over dudes in 5 seconds. I'll watch that shit for hours on a loop and never get bored. Fuck yeah, dude. This was great. Breaker winning with a Goldberg-like spear out of the gate. You may as well just start giving him the win streak. Before you know it, he'll be beating Hulk Hogan in the Georgia Dome for the heavyweight title on free TV. I like Wade Barrett's comment here after Corey Graves goes, maybe we should watch the whole match again. And Wade goes, do we have enough time? Now, apparently this was not Braun's debut. Am I correct? Did you wrestle on the Go Home show last week before the Australia pay-per-view? Seems like an odd time to debut somebody on the main roster. At least for their debut match. I know Breaker's made a couple cameo appearances on there. But I think I read somewhere that Braun had already wrestled last week. I mean, if he did, I hope it was short like this. If his next squash goes any more than 15 seconds, they've already dropped the ball on him. But they are doing the right thing. This is exactly how I would book Braun Breaker if I were in charge. Hopefully they don't fuck it up. Hey, man. If anybody's going to be Gunther for that IC title, Breaker's the guy to do it with. So from there, for reasons that I cannot explain at all, they had a completely random street fight with Santos Escobar and Carlito. A feud that is still ongoing, apparently. Even though I'm pretty sure we were supposed to get the blow-off to this like 4 months ago and it never happened. Now they're just doing it on free TV in the middle of hour 2. And why was this a street fight? I don't fucking know. Why not? I mean, I watched it in passing. I wasn't glued to the TV or anything. When they went to the fake windmill punches in the first 30 seconds, I immediately checked out. Then it took him another 20 seconds for Carlito to finally pull out a table from under the ring. That's when I said, oh, okay, it's going to be one of those modern Home Depot matches, is it? My God. There's just no creativity anymore. And like the thing that's stupid is it's comedy to all the fans anyway. People chanting, we want apples, popping for all the gimmicks they pull out from under the ring. I mean, it's all just a fucking joke to these people anyway, so why would anybody care or take it seriously? I don't even remember the last time Carlito was on the show. Like, I remember they started the thing with him and Escobar right before Ray went away for knee surgery. We were supposed to get those two at one of those premium live specials last fall, and I don't know what happened. I think Carlito got hurt. I don't know what was going on there. But the whole thing's so stupid. I mean, they went into like the last 3 minutes to have all the supporting cast get involved. Like, you wonder, where the hell was everybody after they rang the opening bell? Why did the heel lackeys wait until Escobar was getting his ass beat to finally come out to try to help him? And then from there, it just kind of turns into a big schmoz with everybody doing random spots. The big talking point of the segment was the return of Ray. He came out feigning the knee injury on the crutches and then ended up laying out Escobar's crew. And then they did this really convoluted sequence where Joaquin Wilde and Cruz Tostito did flipping dives out to the heels on the floor, completely overshooting them in the process, which was just fucking grand. And then Ray did the 619 to Escobar. Carlito spat an apple in his face for good measure. Then he gave him a really sloppy-looking spinebuster through a table for the pin. And I don't know what you want me to say about it. It was a garbage TV match. But the people ate it up like a shit soup platter. So what do I know? I'm obviously out of touch with the modern wrestling fan mind in 2024. I'm supposed to look at this and go, this is great. This is fantastic. Non-stop crash TV chaos. That's what everybody likes nowadays. I mean, I'm assuming this sets up Escobar versus Ray for WrestleMania. I'm not really sure what beating Escobar accomplishes, if that's the end goal, but hey, you know what? It's 2024. You got to get those young lions over. So Carlito definitely needed that rub. And that left about 15 minutes for our main event. It is Randy Orton versus Austin Theory, with KO as the special guest commentator. Why? Just because. And he is indeed special. That we can all agree upon. Now, without immediately jumping ahead to the finish, go ahead and take a wild guess as to what you think happened. If you're following the track record of Austin Theory's booking for the last 2 years, you should not require much forethought. So at the end of the day, all I could really do was watch the match in a vacuum and wait for the inevitable to happen. I mean, aside from that one noticeable botch on the top turnbuckle, the wrestling was fine. You know, Theory got a decent amount of offense on Orton, so it wasn't a complete one-sided squash. And the spot in the corner they fucked up could have ended tragically, but thank God Theory's a great athlete, so he managed to kind of save it. Orton was going for a superplex, but his foot slipped on the middle rope, so Theory tried to rotate it and turn it into a modified blockbuster. But because Orton's a fucking idiot, he didn't bother selling it. Just got up to his feet and shrugged his shoulders like, whoops, that didn't go according to plan. It's like, dude, all these years in the business, could you try any harder to break the fourth wall? But, yeah, they do a deal where Theory got bounced off the announce desk. Because, you know, that's just kind of a thing that happens in Randy Orton matches. This was also the point in the show where KO was just totally jacking off and not even trying to be serious. I think I'm starting to see why Hunter likes having him out there as comic relief. But they did some more stuff toward the end. Theory tried to capitalize and put Orton away with a few of his tricks, but, I mean, we all knew what was coming. And to be fair, it was a rather cool-looking spot where Theory goes for the flipping DDT through the ropes, but Orton kind of turned it into an RKO and got the pin. I mean, Theory basically had to levitate to get himself that high off the ground, so it did kind of defy the laws of physics. But the people pop for it. KO marked out. Yet again, Theory doing the job. No surprise there. I mean, it was a fine way to give Orton a TV win. And obviously, you see the creative direction they're going for both guys. Eventually, they'll have Theory split away from fodder. Meanwhile, Orton's going to be going after Logan Paul. So, I mean, he is sort of the priority in terms of the talent being featured at the moment. If you remove the idiocy of Theory doing his 500th consecutive job, it was a fine way to close out the show. But it all kind of paled in comparison to everything that happened at the top of the show with the Bloodline. Once that segment ended, nothing else really mattered. And that's the recurring trend with WWE television. At least when it comes to SmackDown. It's the Bloodline versus Cody Rhodes show. Everything else happening is just kind of there to fill the empty space. And I know we're still about a month away, but man, they got a lot of work to do if they're trying to generate more excitement for this WrestleMania card. There's a couple interesting things on the surface that they're teasing, but it's the hype factor that's missing. And that should never be the case for a Big Four pay-per-view. Especially not during WrestleMania season. Like, I talk about it, but this is the time of year where people should be excited. Wrestling fans, we should be looking to this show and thinking of all these big dream matches and all these potential blow-offs that they've been building up for months. Instead, it's just kind of like, whatever. We're ready to see Cody beat Roman to win the belt. What else is there that's kind of attracting people right now? Logan Paul and Randy Orton is interesting on paper. But, yeah. Not a whole lot else going on. So we'll see if they step their game up in the next several weeks, but they don't have a lot of time. And right now, I am not impressed with the way they're piecing this Mania card together. So that brings us to the fallout from NXT Arrival. Also, I'm now just realizing that the dates for these Retro Raws and Retro NXTs are lining up. Both were March 6th episodes. Interesting. I guess it's because of the leap year in February. It ended up syncing the dates up together. So I was kind of expecting a half recap, half new material episode here, but that didn't ended up being the case. They had a quick little 2-minute VTR at the top, mainly focusing on the big 3 matches from the Arrival show. There was Cesaro and Zayn, the girls match, and the ladder match. They also aired some exclusive where John Cena came down to endorse Neville and congratulate him on being the new champion. He said he was looking forward to working with him at some point. Yeah, pretty sure that never happened, but I could be wrong. But that was mainly it for recap footage. From there, they basically moved right along with the next set of tapings. They claimed it's the dawn of a new era in NXT. And we kick things off with our new NXT champion, Adrian Neville, in action. He went one-on-one with Camacho. Yeah, 1 week after that gruesome ladder match with Bo, he's already back wrestling at 100%, doing every spot in the book. And by and large, he didn't really have any issues putting away Camacho here. He beat him with the Red Arrow in like 2 minutes. But it was all mainly a serve-up to the post-match stuff. Neville tried to do his best efforts at a white meat semi-comedy babyface promo, talking about how he's not your prototypical world champion, joking about the way he looks, the way he talks. He said he looks like an elf man. He was born in a small town in England that no one's ever heard of before. But he says when it comes to him being the new champion, it's more so about the accomplishment of dethroning Bo and removing that monkey off everybody's back. The people that have been chanting no more Bo for months. So, surprise, surprise, here comes Bo to respond. And he basically does the cop-out heel excuse here. Tells Neville it's a shallow victory because he didn't prove anything. He didn't pin Bo. He climbed a ladder like a dad cleaning his gutters. So Bo is now cashing in his rematch clause. Because, well, that's just a thing WWE does. Everyone always has a guaranteed rematch clause that's magically grandfathered into those contracts. It was, pretty plain and simple. I always love Bo's condescending delivery where he indicates he does everything for his Bo levers, even though the people are showering him with booze. Like, he doesn't even blink or react to it. He just stands there with that fucking classic grin on his face. So, in fact, this feud will continue. It'll be Bo time for, now, at least a couple more months, one would assume. So then we had this incredibly awkward exclusive interview with Emma, Charlotte, and the Nature Boy. This was all post-NXT arrival, by the way. So they were sitting in front of those interview backdrops. It began with Emma doing a very dry promo about Paige, talking about how she earned Emma's respect after that match. And, well, then it went completely sideways in a hurry as Ric Flair creepily walked into the camera shot, put his arm around Emma's shoulder, and while he's basically taking a minute to prop up Charlotte as a future NXT Women's Champion, Emma is looking in front of her with that "somebody please call the authorities" expression on her face. It was very uncomfortable to watch Rick basically breathe down her neck for like an entire minute and a half. Like, I'm surprised he didn't invite Emma to come ride Space Mountain with him. But then Charlotte walked in, and she finished it off by telling Emma that if she needs a shoulder to cry on, she and Emma can do girls' lunch. And they can talk about how cool it'll be when Charlotte becomes the new NXT Divas champion. And then after Emma stormed off, Flair did some ad-libbing to try to break the awkward silence. Because even Rick was smart enough to recognize that the 30-second delayed dead air shot was stupid and ineffective. I actually forgot this is the thing they did in NXT for a while. Like Rick working the manager role alongside Charlotte. I mean, even at this stage, Flair looked like he was about to crumble over in a heap. My God. This was 10 years ago. And this same motherfucker's been recently seen on AEW television doing angles and promos. I'm convinced this man hasn't aged since he turned 60. No, goddamn it. Where's my Woo Wings clip? Here it is.
Wing!
Yeah, I had to break that one out for old time's sake. So that took us to Emma versus Charlotte. Didn't have to wait long for that one. After just one pre-taped face-off with these two following Emma's loss to Paige, they're already throwing her under the bus to move on to Charlotte as the next priority. Also making her look like a dumbass in the process, based on what they booked for a finish here. I mean, the match was fine. Maybe it's just because I've been numb to all those wretched Summer Rae matches, but I mean, it was okay for 3 minutes. But the big spot at the end was Charlotte feigning an ankle injury after she did a springboard out of the corner. And again, because Emma's a fucking moron apparently, she just stopped wrestling to watch as Charlotte was selling on the mat. And then while Emma had her back turned to look at Sasha on the apron, Charlotte got up and hit her with that stupid flipping DDT thing she used to do. Or it always looked botched because it never looked good and nobody knew how to fucking take it. So yeah, Charlotte stole the victory, according to Tom Phillips here. Even though she just kind of played Emma like a fool. And just like that, they are already moving things to Charlotte versus Paige. Sucks to be Emma. But, I don't know, maybe she can go pop some bubbles with her fans or something to pass the time. And from there, it's right back to Renee Young for some more riveting line of questioning for these post-arrival interviews. It's hard to wonder why these were exclusive. But she has now asked Emma and Paige the "how are you feeling" question. So guess what her captivating, brilliant question was for Sami Zayn? Sami, how are you feeling about your loss to Cesaro? I'm feeling like these fucking writers need a wrestling mind to help them script out better material. I mean, you really didn't say much of substance here. Talked about the heartbreaking loss, but after the little embrace they had, Sami thinks he got what he wanted. Well, good. At least he thinks instead of feels. And then we had Yoshitatsu's god-awful WWE theme music versus Corey Graves. Can't even begin to describe this fucking canned music they used for this poor guy. It was so generically WWE, it's not even funny. It sounded like one of those menu option themes you'd hear for a Nintendo video game. It was laughably horrible. I play you a sound sample, but I don't want to get hit with a copyright strike. Because God forbid I use 20 seconds of a Yoshi fucking Tatsu soundbite from 10 years ago. I also love this introduction from Brandy. She goes, making his way to the ring. From Japan. It's Yoshitatsu. Where in Japan? Fuck if I know. As if you couldn't tell the guy was from Japan. Couldn't even bother to make up a city on the spot. Tokyo, Kyoto, Hiroshima, Osaka, Nagoya. No, apparently that would have required a quick Google search. Had to be very broad here with our description. From Japan, somewhere. So this Corey Graves push is still a thing they're doing. Of course, he had to do a pre-match work shoot promo where he's talking smack about being left off the NXT Arrival card, having to play second fiddle to guys like Sami Zayn, who hasn't won a match since the birth of Christ. Instead, he gets the celebrity treatment while Corey's out there wrestling a guy who hasn't been relevant for his entire life. Just burying the shit out of Yoshitatsu. Like, to the point where you realize, even though he's a heel, it's like, yeah, he's kind of right. No offense to Yoshitatsu, but Corey isn't exactly fibbing here. And after droning on and on for like 5 minutes and getting zero reaction from the crowd, that was the telling thing about the promo, the fact that nobody cared. Well, finally he gets in the ring to work the match. And this is how it goes. He immediately bails to the floor to try to get himself counted out. Tatsu tries to go out and grab him and throw him back in. Graves hits him with a lariat. He runs him into the ring steps. And the ref does the slow, dramatic 10 count where it looks like Tatsu's about maybe a half a second away from breaking the count. But then he just gets counted out anyway. At which point, Graves proceeds to beat up Tatsu after the bell and then put him in his lucky 13 submission hold. Also, Sami Zayn could run out and make the save, basically challenging Corey to a match later. So what did we learn here? Well, Yoshitatsu's a geek for one. Not only did Corey bury him 10 feet underground by calling him irrelevant, but then he still got his ass kicked and lost. How about you piss in his mouth while he's down? What more harm could be done? Speaking of harm being done, plenty of that happened to the people that had to suffer through this Adam Rose vignette. Yeah, this fucking thing. Well, let's backtrack for a minute here. Remember Leo Kruger? Yeah, well, they've scrapped that apparently. And now he's doing this exotic, flamboyant, semi-homosexual gimmick as a babyface. Now being surrounded by his posse, some of whom were actually familiar faces. We had a Brawny the Strowman cameo here. Alexa Bliss was hanging out on the couch while Adam was doing his promo with Devin. I think I saw Elias back there at one point. We weren't walking with Elias quite yet. He was more or less walking with the Exotic Express. For the record, I cannot emphasize enough just how horrible this all was. It's not even like they were heavy drinkers. They weren't like college kids that were part of a fraternity or a sorority or whatever. No, it was just wacky cartoon characters doing really bad dancing around ringside in the locomotive position. And occasionally Adam Rose would wrestle a match. And not well. Yet, somehow, it got over, at least for a period of time. And to say I was not a fan, that would probably be underselling it. But this is before we even saw his first match. What we were told was a sneak peek preview of what was to come. The Exotic Express. Yeah, this was WWE's thing during the mid-2010s. More goofy gimmicks and bad ideas that made the mid-90s look like the fucking golden era. To be continued with that in just a second. Then we had a series of back-to-back pre-tapes where Xavier Woods challenged Rusev to a match. You know, because we haven't already seen that match, I don't know, a dozen or so times already. Because we're still holding out hope that Xavier Woods pulls off that Creed miracle of a lifetime over the Bulgarian Brute. Get it? Apollo Creed. Consequences Creed. Xavier, fuck it, who cares? So we did in fact get the Adam Rose debut on this program. Doing the whole intro rigmarole and everything. And he had very mixed reactions from the crowd. Everything from young women dancing and following what the Rosebuds were doing around ringside, to grown-ass men shaking their heads and going, what the fuck is this bullshit? I was more so in that camp. And that's not just because I'm a miserable guy that hates everything fun. I just thought the gimmick was stupid because, well, it was. So the match is Adam Rose versus Wesley Blake, the fake cowboy, distant cousin of Hangman Page, I presume. And so Adam did a bunch of relatively suspect-looking offense, while occasionally hitting Blake with a series of arm drags just for flavor. And then he fired up toward the end, did some really fake sloppy-looking elbows to Blake on the mat, and then he hit a running lariat out of the corner that somehow turned Blake inside out, even though Rose barely grazed them. And that's how Rose won his debut match. This weak clothesline that apparently rendered Wesley Blake dead. Lovely. So we learned a lot more here. We learned that Adam Rose's gimmick was death television from day one and was doomed to fail on the main roster. And we know that Wesley Blake is about as much of a cowboy as Adam Page is. That is vital information for your everyday life. So with the remaining limited energy I have left in the tank, let's go ahead and cover this main event. A match that was apparently made official by General Manager JBL. Stop. Show of hands to anybody that actually remembered that Bradshaw was still the general manager of this fucking program. We have not seen this guy make a physical appearance in weeks. But apparently he's still calling the shots somewhere behind the scenes. Anyway, he apparently co-signed the challenge from earlier. Sami Zayn versus Corey Graves. Since Graves decided to methodically outsmart his babyface challenger Yoshitatsu, Bradshaw figured the best form of punishment would be to make the heel pull double duty and wrestle twice in one night. This is also one of those rare times, I think, in his entire career where I can actively say Sami Zayn wrestled a guy that was in worse physical shape than he was. God almighty, dude. You know, beyond my complaints about Corey Graves boring the brakes off of me for years and the fact that I never liked his ring style, God, he looked like shit physically. No muscle tone, no body definition, just a generic tattooed, average-looking motherfucker that ought to have been doing jobs in PWG. You don't like it? Fuck you. Guy was never any good. Pearl of the Underground. Still have no idea what the hell that means. So the match is chugging along for a while. Early to mid portion was fairly basic in terms of everything they were doing. And as they start to kick it into the third gear, kind of ends up turning into one of those modern style matches where They're just kind of spamming a bunch of near falls and counters to try to hook the people in. I did like William Regal calling out the stupidity of guys arguing the official's call for a 3 count. Basically saying, stop arguing, you fucking idiot. Keep wrestling. It was obviously a 2.5 count. I fully agree with that sentiment. They traded a bunch of stuff at the end. People got into it. They end up doing the deal where Graves tries to cut off Zayn as he goes for a springboard arm drag off the ropes. But Graves goes to catch him in a fireman's carry. And then Zayn turns that into a small package and gets the upset flash pin. Kind of rubbing it in Corey's face from earlier when he joked about, wondering when the last time Sami Zayn won a match. Well, it came back to bite him. Again, what they did was fine. I won't crap on the entire thing just because Graves was in it. I think it was more so designed to give Sami a win back after eating the loss to Cesaro. So that was good. Beating Corey Graves isn't going to harm anybody because nobody cares about Corey Graves. So again, all fine. Obviously the next step is getting Zayn to climb the ladder to get into title contention again. But they're still keeping him preoccupied with other obstacles in the meantime, so that's good. All in all, it was kind of a trudge to get through this one, but show wasn't horrible. It was a lot of match, promo, repeat formula, so kind of got static as we got closer to the end. But, they're basically diving into the next set of storylines at this point. They're not really lingering on the Arrival show outside of the exclusive interview segments we saw. They're just turning the page on to the next chapter and gearing up for, I believe it's the May show where they officially start the TakeOver series. Again, I know that was a little unclear with the NXT Arrival show, but I believe NXT TakeOver is the May show for later on this year. So we will have that to look forward to. And as we conclude things for this Monday edition, again, going back to what I said at the top of the show, make sure you all subscribe, comment, like if you would not mind. And we will reconvene on Friday for the Classic Territory reviews. And I think it's smooth sailing until we get to WrestleMania in a few weeks. I still have to navigate how I'm going to go about doing that. But we will cross that bridge when we get there. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you on Friday. Take care. Peace out.